We were classified as a death world. They didn't know we knew. The Council archives opened at 0900 hours on a Thursday that would later be remembered as the day humanity found out what the galaxy thought of their home. It had taken 6 weeks of diplomatic negotiation just to get access. Ambassador Velthari had argued for graduated disclosure, sensitive materials first to government liaisons, then to military intelligence, then, in carefully managed stages, to the public. He had proposed an 18-month timeline. He had called it responsible transition. Commander Yara Solis, watching the negotiation from 3 parsecs out, had called it something less diplomatic. They're worried about how we'll react. Lieutenant Ezra Mwangi had said. They should be, Yara had said. Not because we'll be angry. Because once we start reading, we won't stop. She had been right. The archives opened at 0900. By 0947, Dr. Yemi Adeyemi, xenobiologist, professor of comparative ecology at the University of Nairobi, and the person who had published 3 papers on theoretical alien biology before any alien biology existed to study, had located, downloaded, and begun reading the full xenobiological assessment file on the 3rd planet of the Sol system. Category 7 Deathworld. She read it twice before she picked up her coffee. She read it a 3rd time before she started laughing. Not because it was wrong, because it was exactly right. The file was comprehensive. 43 separate xenobiological surveys, conducted by 9 different species over 60 years, cross-referenced and unified into a single assessment document that was, she had to admit, a genuinely impressive piece of scientific work. It was thorough, rigorous, methodologically sound. It concluded, unanimously and with extensive supporting data, that the 3rd planet of the Sol system was among the most hostile environments in the known galaxy. The native fauna operated at metabolic rates and physical capabilities that exceeded all known comparable species. The apex predators were, by galactic standards, absurd, large, fast, unpredictable, and in several cases capable of pursuing prey across multiple biomes. The insects alone had 17 documented varieties that could cause lethal anaphylaxis in Keth biology. The microbial environment was, for most galactic species, essentially a slow-motion death sentence. Gravity pulled at 9.8 meters per second squared. Technically survivable for several species, but requiring constant physiological adaptation that most couldn't maintain long-term. The atmospheric oxygen content was high enough to make combustion trivially easy. The radiation load from the Sol star was unfiltered enough that, for species accustomed to more shielded worlds, prolonged surface exposure was inadvisable. 17 separate civilizations had assessed this world, independently, without comparing notes, and every single one of them had reached the same conclusion. Avoid. Yemi set down her coffee and looked out her window at the acacia trees beyond the campus, at the distant shimmer of heat above the plain, at a sky that was, apparently, trying to kill 13 of 17 known sapient species. She began drafting the email to her department head. Subject: block off tomorrow morning. I need the auditorium. The auditorium held 320 people. By the time Yemi began speaking, every seat was full and the walls had people standing against them. Word had moved fast. The university's emergency comms hadn't gone down in 30 years. They went down briefly at 8:47 because too many people were trying to connect to the live stream simultaneously. She'd titled her talk, A Hazard Assessment, External Perspectives on Earth. She stood at the podium with the file projected behind her, alien script, council formatting, the Category 7 designation, and the original Galactic standard, and looked out at an audience that ranged from first-year undergraduates to the Dean of Sciences to 3 journalists who'd gotten there before she could think to ask them not to. She spoke for an hour and 40 minutes. She covered every finding. She translated the alien terminology into the most accurate English equivalents she could find. She explained the methodology. She gave the council's conclusions their full scientific weight. And then she said, 17 separate civilizations assessed our home, independently, without comparing notes. Every one of them reached the same conclusion. She looked up from the page. They called it a hazard. The room was utterly still. We called a home. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Yemi timed it because she was, at her core, a scientist. Someone was filming. Someone was always filming. The footage reached the Council's monitoring network at 1,600 hours. Arbitrator Solène watched it in Chamber Zero with the sound off, reading the translated transcript, and felt something she hadn't expected. Not alarm. Not concern. The thing she felt was closer to recognition. She had classified Earth as a death world and thought that was the end of the analysis. She was beginning to understand that the assessment was never the point. The xenobiological file had a footnote. Section 44, subsection C, appended by the Vreth Collective Survey Team in year 37 of the assessment period. It had been flagged for review, reviewed by a single analyst, and quietly buried beneath the weight of the primary assessment. Solène found it at 1,800 hours. She read it 4 times. Asterisk. Note on native sapient species. The primary assessment evaluates Earth's biosphere as hostile to external life. This framing may be incomplete. The native sapient species, Homo sapiens, does not appear to experience the environment as hostile. Behavioral analysis suggests they have adapted, over approximately 10,000 years, to treat Category 7 conditions as baseline. They do not appear to possess a concept of their environment as dangerous in the way other sapient species would apply that term. Asterisk. Asterisk more precisely. They have a concept of danger. It is calibrated, however, to a threat level that would constitute an existential emergency for most galactic species. Asterisk. What we classify as their normal daily existence is, by galactic standards, a sustained survival emergency. They consider it Tuesday. Asterisk. Solène set the file down. She thought about Yara Solis, weapons cold against 214 warships, calling the confrontation a logistics problem. She thought about the Meridian, sharing weapons data from a dying ship, because sharing felt like the right thing. She thought about humanity discovering 61 years of secret management and responding, not with anger, but with, "We find you fascinating." They had grown up on a Category 7 death world. They had not noticed it was trying to kill them. She was beginning to understand why they were difficult to frighten. Act 3, the renegotiation. In the weeks after Yemi's lecture, something happened that Solène's diplomatic models had not predicted. Humanity used the death world classification not as a grievance, but as a negotiating position. Not aggressively. Not combatively, the way you use information that you find genuinely interesting. The human delegation arrived at the second round of accession talks with a proposal, formally titled Xenobiological Exchange Protocol, Draft 1. 14 pages. Footnoted, professionally formatted in both Galactic Standard and English. The proposal, in essence, was this. Humanity would like to study the Council. Not politically, not militarily. Scientifically, they had noted that 17 civilizations had assessed Earth and found it hostile. They were curious what 17 civilizations found hospitable. They proposed a mutual xenobiological exchange. Human scientists embedded with willing Council member species, Council scientists, if any wished, embedded with humans. They noted, in a footnote that Solène read 3 times, that the Deathworld classification itself was scientifically interesting from their perspective. They had 17 complete xenobiological surveys of their own world. They would like to compare methodologies. Ambassador Veltheri read the proposal and had the specific sensation of a person who has just handed someone a box, intending to give them something to carry, and watch them open it, examine the hinges, and begin asking questions about the manufacturing process. They want to study us, he said, to no one in particular. They want to study everything, his aide said. We are a subset. Yemi Adeyemi was not at the negotiating table. She was back in Nairobi, fielding 847 interview requests and trying to finish a paper she'd started 6 months ago on theoretical convergent evolution. She had co-opted her undergraduate seminar into helping her cross-reference alien biology data from a newly opened archives. The seminar was supposed to be on Earth ecology. She had made an executive decision. Her students were the happiest they'd ever been. On a Tuesday, she received a message from the Keth Dominion's chief xenobiologist. It was politely worded and took some time to get to the point, but the point was, they had read her lecture transcript. They had some questions about her interpretations of the Earth atmospheric chemistry data. Would she be available for a consultation? She wrote back in 4 minutes. She had 7 questions of her own. What happened in the council chamber, away from the cameras and the diplomatic choreography, was harder to document. Solène had called a private session with the Xenobiology Committee. 8 species. The question on the table: what did the Deathworld classification mean? Now that humanity had found it, the Keth representative, a scientist, not a diplomat, had said something that stayed with Solène long after the session ended. We classified their world because we could not live there, he said. We never asked whether that was their problem or ours. The room had been quiet for a moment. The classification is accurate, he continued. Their world would kill most of us. But we have spent 60 years treating this as a statement about them. It is a statement about us, about the limits of our biology. They have spent 10,000 years living past the limits of a biosphere that would kill us in 72 hours. We call it dangerous. They call it a home. He paused. I believe we need a new analytical framework. The Xenobiology Committee voted to commission one. The commission would take 3 years. It would be led by a joint team, human and council both. Yemi Adeyemi was asked to co-chair. She said yes before the message finished loading. Act 4, what it means. Solène wrote the summary memo at midnight. It was the most important document she produced since the quarantine vote. The memo was addressed to all council members. It was classified, but she had stopped believing classification meant much in the context of humanity. Asterisk. The Deathworld classification was accurate. It was also incomplete. Asterisk. Asterisk, we classified Earth as hostile to life. We failed to note that it had, in fact, produced life, sapient, curious, adaptable, and apparently unbothered by conditions that would terminate most of us. Asterisk. Asterisk, the xenobiological exchange proposal should be accepted, not for diplomatic reasons, though it is diplomatically sound, for scientific ones. If humanity has evolved behavioral and physiological adaptations that allow them to function normally in Category 7 conditions, that data has implications for every medical, xenological, and survivability model we have built in 11,000 years of galactic governance. Asterisk. We may have been studying them as a threat vector. We should have been studying them as a data set. Asterisk, I recommend we begin. They have already started. Asterisk. She attached the footage of Yemi's auditorium. In the video, Yemi was still at the podium, reading from the council's own file, and 300 people were on their feet. Her expression was not triumphant. It was the expression of someone who has just confirmed a hypothesis they've been sitting on for years and is already thinking about the next one. The galaxy, Solène thought, had classified Earth as a place that would kill you. It had failed to account for what living in a place that could kill you does to the people who survive it. The first formal xenobiological exchange request went through at 0900 the following morning. Earth sent 12 applications within the hour, all from scientists, all with preliminary research questions already attached. The galaxy, for the first time, had to decide if it wanted to be understood. It was a harder question than it looked.